Today we're going to start our first lesson on unit rate. Let's start by copying the learning target in your notebook. I can define and explain ratios, rate, and unit rate. Does anybody remember what ratios, rate, and unit rate are from 6th grade? We're going to start out with our bell ringer, remembering ratios. Write the ratios of apples to bananas 3 different ways. If you don't remember all 3 different ways, write as many of the ways as you can remember. Now we're going to check our answers. Does anyone want to tell one way that they wrote apples to bananas as a ratio? Do we have any other ways? Here are the answers. You can write ratios in 3 different ways. Any questions? Now let's copy some vocabulary. A rate. A rate is a ratio that compares quantities with different units of measure. Most of the time you will see and write ratios as fractions. Example, this ratio compares dollars to pounds, so it is a rate. $6 for every 3 pounds. With rate ratios in all fractions, the fraction bar means you are dividing. We use this a lot in 7th grade. So the ratio $12 for 3 pounds is telling us since the fraction bar separates, we can divide. $12 divided by 3 pounds. Does anybody know that answer? Raise your hand. Good, it's $4 per pound. This is a unit rate. Copy more vocabulary. A unit rate is a ratio comparing quantities where one of the quantities are 1. We're in 7th grade now, so we're going to learn something called a proportion. We're going to learn how to solve unit rates using a proportion, because sometimes they'll get a little complicated. If we know how to set up a proportion, we know we have the right answer. So copy the example and follow along. 16 pages are read in 8 minutes. How many pages are read in 1 minute? Even if you can do this one in your head, I'd like you to go through the steps so we can learn how to do a proportion. First, we got to say what two things we're comparing. We're comparing pages and minutes. So we're going to set up a proportion. Proportion is two ratios that are equal. So we're going to always keep the same units together. So we have pages with pages on top and minutes with minutes on bottom. All we did was read the problem and said what two things we're comparing and set them together. For the next step, we're going to fill in what we know. So at the beginning it says 16 pages are read, so we put 16 pages. 16 pages are read in how many minutes? Good. 8 minutes. So we have, sorry about that. So we have the 16 pages in 8 minutes. Then it says how many pages are read in 1 minute. So with minutes, we know it's going to be 1. But what about this space right here? Beside the pages. It says how many pages are read in 1 minute. Since we don't know, we're going to put a variable there. Now to solve a proportion, we're going to cross multiply the two numbers that are across from each other. You see, 8 doesn't have a number across from it because that is our unknown. So we have to multiply the 16 pages times 1 minute. And what is 16 times 1, everybody? Once we cross multiply, then we have to divide your answer by the number that's left alone. So we already have our 16, so we've already used the 16 and the 1. And what's the number that's left by itself? 8. So you do 16 divided by 8. Once you get the answer, circle it in your notebook. Should have got 2 pages in 1 minute. So your unit rate is 2 pages per minute. Now remember, we're starting off with simpler numbers. We're going to get more complicated. So even if you can do it in your head, I want everybody to set up their proportion so you know how to solve a proportion. Now you try this one by yourself. 36 pages are read in 12 minutes. How many pages are read in 1 minute? If you do not set up your proportion, I'm not counting this as correct. Remember to find what you're comparing to set up your proportion, then cross multiply and divide. Good job. Now let's check our answer. So you're comparing pages and minutes. So we have 36 pages over 12 minutes, and X pages over 1 minute, because it says how many pages, so the X goes with the pages. Then we have to cross multiply 36 times 1. Who can tell me why I'm multiplying 36 times 1 and not 12 times 1? Good, we always multiply the two numbers that are across from each other. Then we have to divide by the number that's by itself. 36 divided by 12 is how many pages? 3 pages in 1 minute. Now let's have a little math discussion. I want you to turn to your partner, and I want negatives to answer the first question and positives to answer the other one. While the person that's supposed to be talking is talking, the other partner needs to listen. The question for negatives. Can you calculate the unit rate without setting up a proportion? How can you calculate the unit rate without setting up a proportion? Talk to your partner about this now. Remember, only negatives should be talking, positives should be listening. Okay, wrap up your thought in about 10 seconds. Good, so now it's positive's turn. Now you're allowed to talk. How does setting up a proportion help you organize your numbers? Give you about 10 seconds to wrap up your thought. Good. Now we're going to try this with fractions. So copy down the example. If 1/2 a gallon of paint covers 1/6 of a wall, then how much paint is needed for the entire wall? Now, before I give you the answer, I want everybody to try this using the same steps we did with whole numbers. Remember, the first thing we need is to decide what we're comparing. Who can tell me the two different units we're comparing there? Okay. Now let's check our answers. It's okay if you didn't get the first one correct, since the first one we did as a fraction. So we're comparing gallons with gallons and walls with walls. So let's read the problem again. If 1/2 a gallon of paint, so where's the half go? Good, with the gallon, covers 1/6 of a wall, so we put the 1/6 with the wall. Then how much paint? So gallons is paint, so we put our X with the gallons, is needed for the entire wall. So we're just doing one wall, so we're going to put one wall. Who can tell me what two numbers that we multiply? Good, we do 1/2 times 1, which is 1/2. Now we have to remember some rules for fractions. Then we divide that by 1/6. There's many ways to divide fractions in 7th grade. We like to do keep, change, flip. If you don't know what that means, raise your hand. I'll have somebody come up to explain it. When we divide 1/2 by 1/6, keep the 1/2. We change the 1/6 to 6/1. 6 times 1 is 6, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now we have 6 halves. Now if you can, I want you to simplify. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 gallons for the entire wall. Any questions for you to do a few of these on your own? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try these 3 problems. Then I'm going to give you the answer. For each of these problems, I need to see a proportion, your work when you multiply and divide. If you need to simplify, try to simplify. Okay, your 5 minutes starts now. Okay, you have about 2 minutes left. Once you finish, just sit quietly. You have 1 minute left. Okay, your time is up. Now we're going to go over them. For the first one, we're comparing cups of flour with batches. So you have 2/3 cup of flour with 1/4 of batch. X cups of flour with 1 batch. 2/3 times 1, 2/3 divided by 1/4 is 8/3. Did anybody turn that 8/3 into a mixed number? Good. 2 2/3 cups of flour for every batch. For number 2, what are we comparing? We have miles with hours. So 3/4 miles with 2/3 of an hour. So how many miles? X for 1 hour. 3/4 times 1 is 3/4. Divided by 2/3. So we got 9/8. What's that as a mixed number? 1 1/8 miles per hour. Now we're comparing gallons with hours. 1/3 of a gallon and 1/5 of an hour is X gallons in 1 hour. So you do the 1 times the 1/3 and that gives you 1/3 divided by 1/5. And 1/3 divided by 1/5 is 5/3. 5/3 as a mixed number is 1 2/3 gallons per hour. Is anyone still having problems with turning an improper fraction to a mixed number? Now I want your opinion of how you feel. Who in here knows what an emoji is? Well, just about every day, I'm going to ask you how you feel about the lesson. It's up to you to be honest, and I will keep up with your responses. If you get the lesson 100%, if I gave you a quiz or test tomorrow, almost sure you get 100. Put a smiley emoji. I use apples today. You don't have to use apples. If you're a little on the fence, you get it a little bit, maybe need a little more help, put the middle face. And if you're still struggling and you don't really get it at all and you need to completely start over and you need a lot of help, put the sad face. Now I want you to write a sentence to explain why you felt the way you felt.